Hi, everybody. I am excited to be here with Scott Levin, who is the principal of San Diego Mediation. Is that the correct name?
San Diego Divorce Mediation.
Divorce
Yeah.
Mediation, right. And Scott has so much great background for you guys that we're going to have to get through a lot of this quickly because he what caught me about what he called himself was the Chief Peacekeeper. And in divorce, that's really a wonderful way to look at it. So I'm really excited to talk to Scott today. Scott, can you just give a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so my name is Scott Levin. Thank you, Jill, for having me. I'm excited to speak with you once again. This time, with the recording, but we've spoken obviously and become friends. So thank you for having me. But yeah, so my background, I've been a lawyer since 2004 in the state of California. For the first number of years, I was a litigator and then eventually a family law litigator. But in 2012, I had my first son, first of three boys. And at that point in time, I literally just couldn't continue a litigation practice in family law. Even though I was very successful and monetarily, blessed, I just felt that I was doing unnecessary harm to a lot of my clients, because even if I was a good lawyer and focused on trying to resolve cases as quickly as possible, it all depended on who the lawyer was on the other side. And if that lawyer was a bad lawyer, there was nothing I could do to stop the fees from being grinded and the time from being elongated. Like the average litigation divorce case right now is over 2 years now in San Diego. So, I mean, it's just a really long, drawn out process. So in 2012, I decided that I was never going to enter the litigation realm again. And I transitioned my practice entirely to mediation. And over the last 8 or so years, I've been the Chief Peacekeeper, a moniker I came up with. And it's all about, basically both parties to a divorce will engage my services, and we will help them through the mediation process resolve their disputes and, try to come up with a fair and equitable distribution of their assets and debts and come up with a parenting plan and all that good stuff. But we do it all out of court, and I feel like it's really worthwhile work, something I can be proud of. You'll see in the background there, sorry.
That's fine, he's so cute.
It's COVID, right? There's nothing we can do about it. But that's my littlest of three, bashing my dog over the head with the surfboard. But yeah, so I'm happy to be here and talk about and advocate for the process of mediation.
Great. So you said the average divorce that's litigated is 2 years. How long is the average divorce that's mediated?
Yeah, so it's interesting. In my practice, I typically work 90% of my clients do the work of the divorce, figure everything out and come to a signed agreement within 5 weeks of starting with me.
That's awesome.
So, now there is like in California and other states, there's some states have this, but some states don't. There's a 6-month waiting period for when the earliest your marital status can terminate. Excuse me, but the work of the divorce, all that period of uncertainty that's so scary for people, like, can I afford to live? Where will my kids be? Will I see my kids? Will I get support, or how much support will I end up paying? That period of uncertainty that breeds a lot of problems and fighting during the litigation process is only 4 or 5 weeks with me, typically.
So how do you get people, because most people are not thinking they're going to be getting this done in 4 or 5 weeks. How do you get people to do that?
Yeah, so I meet for 90 minutes. I have a package, as cheesy as that sounds. But one of the things that I think is important that is that, most people going through divorce, unless they're sophisticated in business, this is usually the first experience they have with an attorney. So they don't really realize that every time they call their attorney, or every court hearing that their attorney has, or every email or text these days, or whatever they're doing, you Venmo message, who knows what they're up to. They're billing by the minute, and the fees, that's the uncertainty in the fee structure breeds a lot of scariness to clients, I believe, and I lived through that because, although I was doing my best to control fees myself in my practice, that's how I made a living. So, we billed, just like everybody else did. And it was sad to see people when they saw those bills, they were like, oh my God. I'll give you a great example, or not a great example, a horrible example, but one of my clients in litigation, I remember this was like maybe late 2011, right before I switched my practice to mediation. And their daughter didn't come home with her backpack. And so she called me, and this was during the divorce. And she said, hey, my daughter didn't come back with the backpack. And I said, okay. And what do you want me to do about it? And she said, well, can you find out where the backpack is? And I said, sure, I'll try to find out where the backpack is. And so I called the other lawyer because, I can't call the husband in this case. So I called the lawyer, and he wasn't in, and he called me back like 3 days later, and I wasn't in. And I think I eventually emailed him like 1 or 2 days after that, and he emailed me back, and he understood what we were asking for. And so then he finally initiated contact with his client, probably about a week or week and a half after my first attempt to call him. And like maybe another 6, 7, 8 days went by, and he called me back and he said, yeah, the backpack's at the husband's house. And I said, okay, well, can we try to make sure that she returns home with the backpack for now? And he said, yeah, absolutely. I'll relay that message. Well, I asked him what he was going to bill for all that. And he was going to bill $1,800, and my bill was $750.
Oh my gosh.
So they spent $2,500 figuring out where the backpack was. And you know what? It's a really inefficient way to communicate. So I feel like during the mediation process, one of the great things about mediation is that you can you learn to communicate in a new way with your spouse, or soon to be ex-spouse. You're in a room, or these days in a virtual Zoom room, and one of the rules that I impose on people is that when someone's speaking, you have to listen. And I'm not saying fake listening. It's not the listening that I often do with my wife, where I'm waiting for her to stop so that I can start speaking. It's real listening, like stop, write down. If you have something to say, write it down, but you're going to listen and then respectfully let that sink in, think about it. And then if you have something to say to it, you can say to it, but there's no longer countering. You guys have gotten to this point in the relationship where you're getting a divorce. So there's no reason to, counter the other side, or, try to discredit them, because this is what they're feeling. And you need to understand how to communicate with this other person, especially if you have kids. If you don't have kids, I guess burn it to the ground if that's what you want to do. I think that showing compassion to people, when you look back at your life and you're, 82 and you're on their porch, showing compassion, even if you didn't have kids, to your ex-spouse, and showing them being gracious and loving, and leaving the marriage how you came into it, together, is just another feather in your cap, for being a special person. So I forget what your original question was, but I think it was, how do we prepare people to get ready? Well, really, it's an advantage of mediation, because elongated, the long process of litigation is really harmful, I think, to people. So just getting their future organized now is really important. And I often tell people, undertake self-care. If you're going to need to get back into the workforce, or if you've been underemployed and you're going to now need to be, fully employed, meet with a specialist that can help you understand, the market and your skills, and start, applying for the right type of jobs that you're going to want to do, not that you have to do. Or, if you're out of shape like me, then, start, feel better about yourself. The more you can do for yourself in this process that gets you focused on having a better future, the more right-minded you're going to be as we negotiate these tough things during mediation.
Right. So it sounds like you really don't allow them to talk about the past and really, talk about defend themselves, or, you just focus on what they need to get done and to be respectful. And that gets them most of the time to the place that they need to be. Do you advise people initially to meet with an attorney, or just come to you first?
Well, I definitely, most of my clients have consulting attorneys that that will either at minimum review the agreement that I draft. Once we have an agreement on every aspect, then I'll draft what's called the marital settlement agreement, which contains all the things that they've decided upon. And I encourage people to at least have that. And if they can't afford it, then I make one of our meetings literally reading through the agreement together, so that I know that these two people have read it and understood, what's in it. But, other things that a consulting attorney can do are, advise clients, about what they should be asking for or what's reasonable, in terms of, what they want out of, certain assets or debts or parenting plans. But I honestly, I think it's better when they start with me, because one of the great things that my litigator friends are, really good at is setting unrealistic expectations. The law is pretty clear in California, at least. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm just being rambunctious. Again, COVID, what can you do? So, the law certainly, if Jeff Bezos and his wife can get divorced in mediation without ever filing anything public in the court system, anyone can do that, at least in terms of their finances.
Right.
I often think that I strongly advise my clients with kids to meet with a parenting expert, someone like yourself that can really give them advice, Jill, about, what's the best parenting plan for us, given, all these circumstances unique to us and our kids being these ages. So that's really something that I kind of insist on, if it's at all possible, because I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a mental health professional. I can certainly, take down the parenting plan that the two people bring into the room and agree with, and I can bring up other options and things like that. But, I think that meeting with someone 1 or 2 sessions to talk through a parenting plan is really good money, or really well spent money,
Right.
for people. But most of my clients do have attorneys. But you just have to be, you have to try to find ones that are mediation friendly, if this is the path you're taking, and that aren't going to advise you to do things or say things that will blow up the mediation and result in you going and spending way more money in litigation.
Yeah, that's so important, because mediation friendly attorneys, like, people don't understand, like, there are different attorneys that are friendly to mediation and who aren't. And it's very important that you find that, because if you find the other one, you're going to be, probably not able to mediate.
Yeah, if you really, I just finished a book, Our Happy Divorce. I don't know if you've read that yet. It's a really great book, but basically the whole story was, basically that these two people took ownership over their own futures, because everyone that's going through divorce knows what's best for them and their spouse and their kids, more so than someone that somehow passed the bar exam, and in family law probably barely passed the bar exam, or passed it on the second or third time, which there's nothing wrong with that. But, in family law, it's a very tough place to practice. There's a huge burnout rate in family law. So, like, people that start in family law or that practice in family law at one point, a lot of those people are dying to get into another practice of law if there's any other options, because you're dealing with such emotional things, and, really, can be very trying. So,
And you
you know,
don't feel good about it after you're done.
yeah, so you're not dealing with like, typically you're not dealing with like the top graduates from the top law schools. So um, me, of course, as an exception. But I come from, the reason I was in family law is that, I have a background that like led me to family law. And there's certainly a lot of people like me that wanted to, right wrongs in their past or whatever, in their youth, that they think they can make a difference in family law. So
Right.
certainly a lot of people like that. But, you just have to find mediation friendly attorneys, and a lot of mediators who are attorneys like myself will review agreements for people and give advice. So those are always good options to start with.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so I have a question about what if someone thinks their spouse is hiding assets? Like, can you mediate? What do you do in mediation if that comes up?
Yeah, so really, it's a tough issue. So I tell people during my consultations. So I do my consultations with both, both parties to the divorce, and they're free if both people come. And so the thing I tell people is that if you're going to hide assets, don't go down in mediation, because it's the one thing that will blow up a mediation. So, I can never be 1,000% sure if there's a dispute about, where's that extra $1 million, or, I thought we had a Lamborghini. I can never fully prove that that doesn't exist. What I can do is I can take my 20 years of experience and I can call BS on people. And because I've warned them in the consults that if you engage our services, because I'm really an advocate for mediation in my consultations, more so than trying to get people to engage me. I'm plenty busy. So I just want them, I tell people, you need to feel comfortable with your mediator. Like when you hire me, you get me. And so I'm laid back, I'm a family person, but I also am a straight shooter. So if I feel like someone's lying to me, I might just tell them, I think you're not telling the truth, because, I've been doing this 20 years and I just don't think that this is real. This is what you're saying it is. And so, blow it, there are things that we can do though, short of that in mediation. There's something called a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. I'm actually one of them.
Right.
But we can engage an independent certified divorce financial analyst. It's just basically someone that's proven that they know all the financial aspects and ramifications of divorce, and they've taken a certain test to prove that, and so that they now have a CDFA certification. So I have that, and I do that work for my clients. But when there's a dispute about like where's that money or what happened to it, then I suggest that we bring in a third party independent who runs through, all the statements and, give me 10 years of statements for the accounts that are at issue. And they'll basically plot through and try to find the holes. And when they come back with their report, then both parties kind of sign on to saying, okay, well, we've both, oops, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's happening. I don't know why that's happening. Sorry.
That's okay.
Can you edit?
Hopefully I can.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I
That's
don't know. My wife must have gotten on the settings, but so if both parties are hiring a person for the CD as a CDFA, then they're willing to accept that person's recommendations,
Uh-huh.
and then we kind of agree that we're going to accept their recommendations, whatever they are. But yeah, financial hiding of assets definitely is the easiest way to blow up a mediation.
And isn't that something that a forensic accountant also does? How's that different than a CDFA?
Well, a forensic accountant is probably what like litigators typically will use. They're very expensive. I don't typically, I've never had a forensic accountant inside of mediation. Perhaps that's just like, says something about my practice, but I've never, I just rely on the CDFA and friends of mine that I've developed in this industry, that I feel like, if they can't find it, then, these two people either need to litigate that issue or, or just agree just agree that, what the findings are the findings.
Right.
Another
Okay.
thing that we do in mediation is that if you can't agree on everything, you can still hold your mediation agreements. Like, let's say we figure out everything but, two accounts, or everything but a pension. You can basically write up the whole agreement that you've done in mediation, and then you can hire attorneys just to litigate the things that we couldn't figure out. So you're basically limiting the scope of the litigation, so it's much faster and much less expensive, because you're not allowing your attorneys to open up to the whole world of your divorce. You're just saying, look, these 4 things we could not figure out in mediation, and we've agreed to litigate these, but basically submit the marital settlement agreement for the rest of it, the one that we did in mediation. So that's also an option.
I've never knew that. That is a really great option for people who, don't want to litigate everything, and they can get everything done except for a couple of things. That's awesome.
Yeah, it does work really well. It helps. And I also tell people mediation is totally confidential. So anything that we do in mediation can't be used in litigation later. So if you can't figure out what your result, like if mediation is a failure, anything discussed in mediation or anything agreed on can't be then taken over to the litigation process.
Right.
So there's basically no harm, no foul if you start in mediation, which I suggest everyone, except like if there's like a lot of abuse, or physical issues. Those are hard to do in mediation.
Yeah, no, when there's a power differential, yeah, that's hard. But I know. No, I mean, I do too. I'm pretty much, that's what I tell people. If at all possible and you can mediate, why would you not? Because there's something called collaborative divorce. And
Yeah.
a lot of lawyers talk about that, but it's not the same as mediation. It's still using 2 lawyers.
Yeah. And I'm a fan. I've been collaboratively trained. I did that way back in like 2013. So I don't think that was the beginning of collaborative, but it's obviously grown since then. But collaborative is an interesting process. You have to find the right professional still, even though, so collaborative law basically is you each have a lawyer, and the lawyers come into essentially the into the mediation room, and you have a mental health professional there, and possibly a mediator, and possibly a neutral, financial neutral. Mm-hmm. So, but basically the key to it is that the 2 litigators, they swear that they will not represent the parties in litigation should the collaborative law process fail. So they're incentivized to see it through. Right. But that doesn't mean that you really, when I went to my collaborative training, it was, like I said, 7 years ago, I had lunch with a bunch of the lawyers that were at the table. I didn't know any of them. And a bunch of the old school ones were like, this is a bunch of hooey. This doesn't work. And so even though they've been collaboratively trained, it doesn't mean that you're getting someone that's fully in the know. So
committed.
You still need to pick the right professionals to try it.
Right. Yeah. No, and
do you done any of those? Do you work in collaborative?
I do work with collaborative attorneys, but not in that setting where everybody's together. I haven't done that. They've referred people to me, and they do have a lot of the ones that I've worked with aren't these litigators who really want to increase fees. So they're good to work with. But if you're sitting in a space with 2 attorneys, a divorce financial professional, a mediator, and a mental health professional, that's a lot of money you're paying.
It's very expensive. It's actually, I think it tends to be as or more expensive than a litigated process. It's way more expensive than mediation.
Right.
But if that's what gets you to yes, then that's a worthwhile investment. Because a lot of my clients, when they first call me, they're worried about, like you were saying earlier, one person has way more expertise at the finances, or way more knowledge of the finances, or, they're just worried about things and they just wonder if they'll make a fair agreement, for themselves, or if they'll be kind of bullied by just having one professional in the room. And so for those cases, I oftentimes bring in another female mediator friend of mine, and we kind of tag team the process together, which I think makes those clients feel better. And plus, the woman that I usually work with, we have a really great yin and yang. Like, I'm 42 and have a young family, married. She's 62, had a really, really, really tough divorce, have older children that kind of went through that process. So she has a lot of compassion and desire to help, young kids avoid that, the nastiness of it, now. So we just kind of come at it together. So that's something I'll do if I feel like that will help clients, if they're scared about just having one person in the room.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like you have a lot of resources at your fingertips for people, which is so helpful, when you're going through this. I just have one other question. I could talk to you for hours, but I know you have your son and things you have to do.
I'm sorry about that again.
No, that's okay.
In the background, and there's nothing I can do about it.
No, that's okay. What do you have, like, one tip you can give people when they're starting out, just in terms of like how to deal with this in the best way for their family?
Yeah. So I really, just something you said just a second ago, Jill, which is basically, when you go into, I think we talked about this last time we spoke, but my belief is that you should build a team. And because if you're doing mediation, or you're giving mediation a shot, you're already only going to pay the mediator like roughly 5% of what you guys would have both paid 2 attorneys. So you have a lot of money to play with. Not that I'm trying to spend people's money, but when you go into the emergency room with your kid or yourself, and you have, your arm is busted, you fell off a bike, you don't immediately see the surgeon. First you see a nurse, and then you see the emergency room doctor, and then you see the radiologist for the x-rays, and then, or the radiologist then evaluates those x-rays, and there's the x-ray tech helping you. Then if the surgery is needed, you bring in the surgeon. But then after the surgeon, you wake up, you're with nurses, you then go into physical rehab at some point, with physical therapists or chiropractor, whatever it is. And then of course you have your family and maybe some friends that are helping you. So you build a team naturally. The medical industry has transitioned to a team approach. And the divorce process, traditional divorce, is one litigator is your whole world. And that person is the surgeon, the emergency room doc, the chiropractor, the physical therapist, the nurse. And it's just not a good approach. No matter how much you trust this person, no matter how good their reviews are, look, there's a reason that, like, divorce litigators, and it's a tough way to earn a living. I sympathize with them. I was one. But, there's a reason that the reputation of that industry is failing. And in my opinion, it's because you're just relying on that one person for everything. And that one person doesn't know what's best for you. If you build a team, hire Jill, hire a mediator, hire a certified divorce financial analyst, hire a parenting coach. All of that will add up to $10,000, right? Or maybe you're going to pay in San Diego, the average person's paying $52,000 for one lawyer. So you're still way ahead of the game. Right. And I'm not trying to spend people's money, but I'm just saying you rely on each professional to give you and your spouse a collective opinion about where you want your futures to go. Then you're much better off. You're much more prepared. You're much more educated. You're going to feel much more confident about the deal that you're about to make. And when you sign, you're going to feel like, yes, I have done, this is exactly how I would tell my kids to approach this. God forbid that they're going through it in 20 years. You build a team, you'll feel better, and then you get future focused right away. There's a lot of hurt and resentment, especially if the divorce ended in a big blow up or a discovery of something horrible. But the fact is that focusing on that, there's therapy for that, right? And I'm not, of course, I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy for over 10 years. I was in therapy because I was very financially successful, but very unhappy. And I had to figure out why was that? And that's where, I eventually transitioned to my practice. It took me a while to take that leap because it's really a big leap of faith. But build that team and be future focused. Staying in the past and fighting about what got you there just isn't going to do anything to change anything about where you're at.
That's great advice, Scott. And I love your perspective because you were a litigator and you know firsthand how that is not the way to go. And so many people get swept up into it because they think the first thing to do is meet with an attorney and then they're off to the races, So it's so good for people to have this information. I just hope to get it out really widespread. But
Yeah, and I'll definitely share it. As my kids say, like and subscribe, hit that button.
Well, I so much appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today and answer so many questions, and we'll hopefully be in touch with people who see this and in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.